The Formula One journey of Daniel Ricciardo seems to be at a crossroads. While he has been an 8-time race winner, the future appears uncertain. Despite the current lack of open seats with most F1 teams, Ricciardo has hinted that the door to his return is still slightly ajar. Currently, only Sauber has an available spot, but it's doubtful they would consider Ricciardo. Instead, the Australian driver seems close to securing a deal with Red Bull, though this contract may not involve any actual racing. The big question now is, can Ricciardo establish his worth in the world of marketing and business outside of racing? And if he can, will it keep him in Formula One long enough for a possible full-time comeback? Daniel Ricciardo's exit from the sport has sparked endless discussions, and it's likely to remain a hot topic in the months to come. Now that the dust has settled, it's time to consider what lies ahead for him. Despite many believing that his last Formula One race in Singapore might have marked the end of his F1 career, Ricciardo has not dismissed the idea of racing for another team in the future. Red Bull, on the other hand, has been contemplating different roles for Ricciardo in the short term. Helmut Marko, one of Red Bull's key figures, mentioned a possible ambassador role for Ricciardo, a move that could bring marketing and financial value to both parties. For example, Red Bull is actively trying to grow its presence in the American market, and Ricciardo was pivotal in attracting sponsors like Visa, Cash App, and Hugo Boss to the sport, backing the racing team's brand. When discussing Ricciardo's future, Helmut Marko from Red Bull has hinted at several options the team might explore. One possibility is an ambassador role, which could benefit both Ricciardo and Red Bull in terms of expanding their market influence. In particular, Red Bull aims to grow its presence in the US, where Ricciardo is one of the most popular drivers. This popularity is not without reason. Ricciardo has been the key to bringing prominent brands such as Visa, Cash App, and Hugo Boss into Formula One, lending significant backing to the racing team. Marko recently stated, "Daniel Ricciardo is incredibly popular in the United States. While I don't think he wants to try NASCAR, it's hard to say if he would be interested in the PR duties that come with an ambassador role." However, if you were to ask Ricciardo, he might not agree entirely with this narrative, although he hasn't completely ruled it out as a potential career move. Right now, there's a lot on Ricciardo's mind as he considers his next steps in the world of racing. He's processing all possible paths, weighing each option to figure out what's best for his career. When it comes to racing, Ricciardo has acknowledged that he's in a familiar spot, much like he was back in 2023, after parting ways with McLaren. The passion for securing an F1 seat still flickers, though it may not burn as fiercely as before. Nevertheless, if he decides to continue racing, he's made it clear that it must be in Formula One. Other categories like IndyCar or NASCAR don't seem to entice him. Ricciardo recently shared, "I've considered racing elsewhere, but I'm still a competitor with plenty of fire left in me." The question is, will racing in another series truly satisfy that competitive itch? I'm not sure if it will. Ricciardo has been reflecting deeply on his situation. He's in a space where he's letting all options sink in, taking time to figure out his next career move. While he has thought about racing in other categories, he admits that Formula One holds a special place for him. "I've thought about trying other forms of racing, especially when I realized I wouldn't be starting the 2023 season," he said. "But I still have that competitive spirit, that fire. The challenge, however, is whether something else would truly fulfill me. It's tough to say, but would I find the same thrill if I was fighting for 10th place or racing in another series? I've tasted the heights of Formula One. And there's no guarantee that another category could give me that same rush." Ricciardo has already indicated that he isn't interested in being Red Bull's reserve driver, a sentiment that has been reinforced by recent team moves. Red Bull signed current F2 contender Isack Hadjar to take on the reserve driver role, previously held by Liam Lawson before his promotion to a full-time position for the remainder of the 2024 season. It's important to remember that Red Bull has made it clear that they are now focused on developing young talent rather than bringing back experienced veterans. For the rest of 2024, they want a team built around fresh faces, which may continue to be the case going into 2025. This leaves Ricciardo with limited options: either accept a reserve driver position to keep his skills sharp or embrace an ambassador role to support the team from the sidelines. Ricciardo's future remains filled with uncertainty. If a Formula One seat doesn't become available, he may have to explore other racing categories, though the chances appear slim. Red Bull's current lineup, with the ongoing situation involving Perez and Verstappen, makes it highly unlikely for Ricciardo to reclaim a full-time driving role. He was initially brought back from McLaren to showcase his potential to outperform Tsunoda significantly and serve as a backup plan for Red Bull in case of an unexpected change. However, since that hasn't happened as hoped, the logical next step for Ricciardo seems to be an ambassador role within Red Bull. This role goes beyond just racing. It involves drawing in big-name sponsors like Visa and Cash App, both of which became title sponsors for the team because of Ricciardo's influence. The idea of Ricciardo returning to Red Bull as a full-time driver seems increasingly unlikely, especially after Marco's recent comments regarding his current level of competitiveness. He was initially brought in with one primary objective: to outperform Yuki Tsunoda and give Red Bull an alternative if they needed to replace Perez. However, as it became clear that this wasn't happening, Ricciardo's next most viable option now appears to be transitioning into an ambassador role for Red Bull. It's crucial to note that Red Bull has never solely relied on his points. Instead, his value extended into marketing and attracting major sponsorships. If Ricciardo accepts this new chapter, he could continue to contribute significantly to the team's success, albeit off the track. Ricciardo may soon need to come to terms with his new reality, accepting a role away from the cockpit. With Red Bull's focus shifting to younger drivers, the options for him are limited. He could either swallow his pride and take on the reserve driver position to keep himself ready for any unforeseen opportunity, or pivot to an ambassador role that lets him support the team in other capacities. Although he might explore racing in different categories if no Formula One seats open up, the situation within Red Bull remains quite unpredictable. Given the dynamics with Perez and Verstappen, it's highly improbable that Ricciardo will be considered for a full-time spot anytime soon. He was brought back mainly to outperform Tsunoda, but as that hasn't played out as hoped, Ricciardo's next logical step seems to involve more of a promotional role for the team. Ricciardo's return to Red Bull was less about accumulating points on the track and more about his commercial influence. Despite Red Bull framing his comeback as a performance-based decision, the real motivation was to attract prominent sponsors like Visa, Cash App, and Hugo Boss. These companies became significant financial supporters of the team, thanks to Ricciardo's appeal. This is why his departure was such a concern, not just for his fans but also for Red Bull's business strategy. Ricciardo's presence extended far beyond racing. It was about leveraging his star power to attract major partnerships. While a return to a full-time racing seat seems increasingly unlikely, his ability to draw sponsors and promote the Red Bull brand could keep him with the team in a different, yet crucial, capacity. It's becoming clear that a full-time return to Red Bull is a distant possibility for Ricciardo. Marco's latest remarks reveal that the Australian has lost the competitive edge he once possessed while racing for Red Bull, the team where he won 7 races and managed to outperform Vettel in their time together. Marco believes that Ricciardo's decision to leave Red Bull was a turning point in his career, leading to struggles at both Renault and McLaren. While he did manage a victory at Monza, it came under unique circumstances. Marco reflected, saying, "If we knew what happened, we would have helped him." The sharpness in his driving, his late braking, those qualities we admired seemed to fade over the past few years. The killer instinct just wasn't there anymore. Marco has been vocal about how Ricciardo's departure from Red Bull marked a critical turning point. At the time, Ricciardo had concerns about the Honda engine and was swayed by the promises from Renault's Cyril Abiteboul. Financially, there wasn't much difference between what Renault offered and Red Bull's deal, but Ricciardo chose a path that ultimately changed his career. Marco emphasized that if they had identified the issue earlier, they would have stepped in to support him. However, the driving style that once made Ricciardo so unique, the late braking, the sudden maneuvers, was no longer as sharp. This decline in his competitive edge has become one of the primary reasons why a full-time return to Red Bull now seems out of reach. Despite Ricciardo's experience and feedback being valuable, he struggled to outperform Tsunoda as decisively as Red Bull had hoped. In the last 10 races, he remained close to Perez in performance but failed to create a clear gap with Tsunoda. This shortfall was the final factor that sealed Ricciardo's future with the team. Red Bull had high expectations for Ricciardo to dominate Tsunoda and cement his place, but his results did not align with the team's vision for the future. Ricciardo was warned that he needed to significantly outperform Tsunoda to secure his spot. Despite showing flashes of his old self, like his fastest lap performance in Singapore, it wasn't enough. According to Marco, the narrative of Ricciardo's return to Red Bull didn't pan out as they had hoped, and the timing of his departure was linked to several internal factors. While Ricciardo accepted the outcome, his future in the sport remains uncertain. Christian Horner suggested that Ricciardo's decline began as early as the Spanish Grand Prix this year, with internal discussions about his potential replacement starting much sooner. His remarkable test at Silverstone had initially sparked hope for his revival, but it was short-lived as Dev's underperformance at Alfa created the opportunity for Ricciardo's temporary comeback. However, this didn't translate into a long-term role, highlighting the cutthroat nature of Formula One. Ricciardo's case shows that Formula One is as much about business as it is about racing. While he may be out of a driving seat for now, he still holds value as a brand ambassador. Red Bull brought him back partly for his commercial appeal, drawing in major sponsors. His involvement in the sport might shift from the track to promoting the Red Bull brand and enhancing the team's business presence globally. While many see Ricciardo's current situation as the end of his F1 racing days, there's still a faint chance for a future comeback. For now, his best option could be to transition into a different role within Red Bull, leveraging his popularity and influence. Only time will tell if a seat will open up for him to reclaim his place on the grid, but his willingness to adapt may shape what's next in his career. With everything in mind, what do you think is the right move for Ricciardo? Should he accept a behind-the-scenes role, or is there hope for him to return to racing full-time in the future? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to check out our other videos for more updates on Formula One. Well, that's the story of where things stand for Daniel Ricciardo. Whether he'll take on a new role behind the scenes or find his way back to the F1 grid remains a mystery. Now, we want to hear from you. What do you think is the best path for Ricciardo moving forward? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more exclusive Formula One insights and updates. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, keep the racing spirit alive.